Today we're covering Empty Jar, one of the craziest alternate win conditions in GOAT format. And the strategy? We want to flip monsters such as like Cyber Jar, Morphing Jar, and be able to churn through both players' deck, and then you recycle them with cards like Book of Taiyou and also the Shallow Grave. Keep using Cyber Jar's effect multiple times. And then finally, as the payoff, with card destruction and serial spell, we'll force our opponent to draw the rest of their entire deck. As you're drawing for card destruction, and if you can't draw any more cards, you instantly lose. I'm going to break down the card choices that go with this deck, and stay tuned to the very end because I'm going to show you step by step how a winning turn looks like with this deck as well. Let's get right into it.
Final Saga has other products that I put their link in the description below if you want to check them out. And feel free to use the code Commander Jaime for an additional discount and any ongoing sales combined as well.
So with the jars in the deck themselves, it's going to be Cyber Jar and Morphing Jar. Cyber Jar is really the start of this deck, being able to repeatedly destroy monsters on the field, but forcing to reveal 5 cards for both players. And you get to special summon those monsters that can be summoned accordingly, and the rest of the cards go to each player's hand, respectively. Really, with Cyber Jar's effect, it's not necessarily just clearing the field, but it's also building up their hand size. The bigger the hand size, the more effective both our card destruction and the copy effect of Serial Spell will have as well. And so I'll cover some cards such as like Book of Taiyou and Shallow Grave that you want to see ASAP with this card. You can always fall back into Morphing Jar too if needed, but this discards your entire hand and basically resets it to 5. So be wary of that, but you could fall back to it if needed. You could do little things such as like set your spells, and then you could use Book of Taiyou to flip it as well, and now you get 5 new cards in hand. And then you can use cards like Giant Trune to bounce back your back row. Do keep in mind that you want to only set both of these cards when you know you can use them right away. If you feel like you leave them for a return, they are very susceptible to cards such as like Noble Mana Crossout. Also the Chaos monsters such as like BLS and Chaos Sorcerer. And then if they're also in the graveyard, you have to be worried about Kaiku. So usually these cards are safer in your hand once you're ready to use them, or if you special summon them from the deck using cards such as like Mystic Tomato. Also, here's a close-up of the Orca if you're interested in Final Saga's Orcas. Some of these are hollows too. Very cool. 1 copy of Saga, because really when this is from the field to the graveyard, you search for any 1500 attack or less monster and add it to your hand from your deck. This is key on getting the jars, and then you could also use this as tribute fodder for Thunder Dragon to proc it if it's still on the field. This can also be special summoned by Mystic Tomato too if you need to have an extra body and then get the jar pieces that you need to your hand. And speaking of the Mystic Tomatoes, we played 3 of them. Sadly, Final Saga doesn't have any Orcas of this. This would have been so cool if the whole monster lineup would have been Orca. But essentially, this is not only just a floater to get bodies to protect your life points. The deck out strategy doesn't necessarily mean it's always a first turn kill. Sometimes you may have to hold back a turn or 2, maybe 3, to have just the right pieces to be able to go off and actually close out the game yourself. So this helps survive in that respect, but also fetching those pieces, especially if you already have like cards of Book of Taiyou, Shallow Grave already in your hand, but you're missing the Cyber Jar. You could also practice during the battle phase too by attacking into an opponent's monster that is higher attack stat than this. You are destroying your monster on purpose to fetch out the Cyber Jar, and then you can go to your main phase 2. And then you can use cards like Book of Moon to flip it face down. And now you can use Book of Taiyou and then start the cycle there. And you can close out the game on main phase 2. We played triple Thunder Dragon, and so this is really discard fodder, just decked in the deck more. We are playing 40 cards in the deck too. So as soon as you see one discarded, search the other 2. That's literally the monsters, just 9 monsters, and the rest of the deck is spells. So we're starting off with triple Book of Moon. Again, your jars can be face up, whether it be special summoned by effects, or you've already flipped them face up. You can actually force them back down and repeat that cycle. That's really why you have this. You could also use this normally like to defend yourself. You could Book of Moon your opponent's card, but typically you're Book of Mooning your stuff too. This also can trigger where your opponent attacks into the Cyber Jar or into the Morphing Jar if you special summon it with like Mystic Tomato. But as they're attacking it, you can Book of Moon the jar itself. And in GOAT format, a replay doesn't occur. It actually just keeps going with the attack. And so that's one way to trick your opponent into proccing your actual jar effect right there. Triple Book of Taiyou. So I already mentioned this card. This literally selects one monster on the field and flips it face up. That's it. This card with Shallow Grave and Cyber Jar pretty much means you 9 times out of 10 you're going to win that game. There are small instances too where if your opponent has their own Cyber Jar, for example, too, and if they summon it because of your own Cyber Jar resolving, you could actually Book of Moon their Cyber Jar and then Book of Taiyou their Cyber Jar back up to force that to go off. And it's basically what you want to do anyway. But this gets around if you don't have a Shallow Grave to follow up with or a Premature Burial as well. So little instances you could do that too as well on your opponent's monsters. 3 copies of the Shallow Grave. This is basically like a monster reborn in a way where both you and opponent pick one monster that can be special summoned, and it is special summoned as face down already. Typically, it's not the best card for most decks, but in this deck specifically, this works with flip effects such as like, again, the jars. Now, you do have to keep in mind that you can only activate this card if both you and your opponent are able to special summon a monster from the graveyard too. So sometimes if you don't have any traction to start off with and their graveyard is pretty much empty, you have to wait a little longer until you get something there to activate this card. So be mindful of that. Graceful Charity, more into digging into our pieces. You can discard certain cards. More draw powers, Pot of Greed, obviously draw 2. 2 copies of Upstart, get to your core pieces as fast as possible. And what's really cool about those draw cards, they go hand in hand with Feather of the Phoenix. This card essentially lets you discard 1 card, and so you can choose any card from your graveyard and stack it on the top of your deck. And why is that important? This lets you recycle cards, and then if you have cards still in your hand, such as like the Upstart Goblins, the Pot of Greeds, or the Graceful Charities, you could actually immediately draw into the card that you stacked from the graveyard. This is great if you want to keep reusing cards like Book of Taiyou, Shallow Grave, or even Cyberjar, just depending on your game state. This is also a great card to recycle cards. If your opponent used Delinquent Duel and hit one of your combo pieces, you can still get it back with this card. Another one-off is a Drag Down into the Grave. And this card's interesting because you both look at your hands and you choose a card from your opponent's hand, and then they have to discard that card. And then both players draw a card. You have to be careful too, depending on what cards you want to keep in your hand. So a strategy that you can do is set your spells. And of course, if you have a Cyberjar that you're going to use anyway, you can set it and then actually activate this card. This is also a card that really helps set up the Shallow Grave as well. You could actually force an opponent's monster to go to the graveyard from their hand just like that too. And now your Shallow Graves are live. Playing triple reload, this is basically if your hand doesn't look that great, especially if you have 5 cards or more in your hand, shuffle all of them back and get a new hand. And this potentially can get you into the final pieces, especially once you get closer to almost decking out yourself and you're trying to dig for either Serial Spell or card destruction. Sometimes you need to activate a reload to get those 2 together finally in your hand. Also 1 copy or Premature Burial. 3 Giant Trunade. So this card, again, is able to clear the field. This helps, especially if you're trying to get rid of cards like Skill Drain that are active on the field, or any other trap cards such as like Solemn Judgment that can stop your key plays. So you might as well clear the back row without having any fear. Again, there's no hand traps in gold format too, like Effect Veiler or cards like that. So as long as you clear the field, then you're basically just able to pop off entirely. Again, you could also bounce your cards too, such as like Swords of Revealing Light, Level Limit Area B as well. Reuse Premature Burial as well. But also if you set your cards for like, let's say Drag Down for the Grave or a Morphing Jar, you can get your cards back into your hand. And here's like name an iconic duel, right? And this is card destruction and Serial Spell. Again, you want to close the game with a card destruction and then chain Serial Spell. You want to discard your entire hand, and you got to have at least another card still in your hand when you do these. And since you have 0 cards, when both instances of the card destruction resolve, you're discarding 0 to draw 0. So you are safe, and your opponent is the one that suffers. You want to get them to basically where their deck size is basically at least twice the size of their hand. So what do I mean by that? If they have 20 cards left in deck, then as long as they have 10 cards in their hand, this will proc twice, reducing them to 0, and then you can pass your turn, and then it goes to the draw phase. They lose at that point. They had 19 instead. On the second resolution of the card destruction, when they try to draw their 20th card, they instantly lose. Here are some rulings too to keep in mind when to be able to activate card destruction. And yes, you can activate card destruction knowing that you can either deck yourself out or your opponent. That is actually a legal ruling in GOAT format. And this is what actually makes Empty Jar an actual viable deck in the format too. Again, check out the GOAT format rulings too if you want to double check, or even check out the GOAT format Discord and ask those questions too for yourself. What's also really cool is that there's a card such as Spell Reproduction where you can actually just grab another spell from your graveyard and be able to reuse it. This is your way of reusing Book of Taiyou's, Shallow Graves, being able to get back your card destruction as well, or even your Serial Spell too. This card typically on its own is not that great, but in this deck, since you're building a hand with Cyberjar, since you play 31 spells, you're bound to have cards in your hand that accumulate, and guess what? They're all spells, so this actually fulfills the condition of discarding 2 spells to get another one. And like I said, you need to stall a little bit sometimes, and so Level Limit Area B stops level 4 or higher monsters and forces them into defense position. You can only play 2 in Go format and then 1 copy of Swords of Revealing Light. Of course, you can only play 1 copy too. So these 3 cards are basically your stall cards. Again, you can use cards like Giant Trune to get them back into your hand. And that's your way to reuse Swords of Revealing Light for more turns if it drags on that longer. But typically this makes it harder for your opponent to be aggro and close out the game before you get a chance to close out yourself. So I'm going to show off how you can win with this deck. This replay so happens to be a first turn kill. And if you look at our hand, we already have a Cyberjar and the Shallow Grave, but we also have some phenomenal cards such as like Pot of Greed and Card Destruction already too. So we're going to play Pot of Greed and see what we draw here. And so we got a Book of Taiyou and a second Shallow Grave. As I said, as long as you have these 3 cards, you can pop off. So set the Cyberjar and immediately activate Book of Taiyou. This will proc it. I'll fast forward this a little bit. And as you can see, these are the cards that are summoned. We got Serial Spell already. They're adding their own cards too. Spell Reproduction as well. And Giant Trune to my hand. So here in this case, we have double Shallow Grave, but we don't have Book of Taiyou. But we do have Spell Reproduction, and we also have the Feather of the Phoenix to be able to recycle that one. And here I set 2 cards. Activate Feather of the Phoenix. And I'm going to stack Book of Taiyou in this example. So I'm going to actually premature activate Card Destruction. And you'll see what I mean. So we get some new cards too. And we so happen to get a Thunder Dragon. We're going to activate that. Get our 2 Thunder Dragons already. Remember, we set our cards. We're going to activate the Shallow Grave. Get our Cyberjar. Set it face down. They're going to get their monster too, which is Zambara. You may be wondering, why did I prematurely use Card Destruction? It was so I could actually get Shallow Grave to be active. Again, this was our very first turn, so our opponent hasn't done anything. And so that was a way to get a monster into the graveyard from their own hand, essentially. So I'm going to fast forward these. Got Reload, Graceful Charity, Drag Down, Spell Reproduction, and Book of Moon. And as you can see, they're getting all these cards too. So we so happen to get Graceful Charity, drawing 3, discard the excess Thunder Dragons, literally. So we have all spells in our hand. This is good for spell reproduction use. But we still have that second copy of Shallow Grave. So I'm going to get that for Cyberjar. They get their Shining Angel. And I had that spell reproduction since the first hand. Discarded these 2 cards. I don't want to use Drag Down, so that's, I already have what I need in my hand. So now I got Card Destruction back. Spell Reproduction again. And the reason I'm doing this is because they have a big enough hand where their deck size is 16. They have over 8 cards already in their hand. Not sure why I did that again. Maybe I just want to dig deeper. Or maybe I just wanted extra spells, but it doesn't really matter. I saw they're playing a last turn deck. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So I got Serial Spell. And so in this case, basically I win at that point. So again, you activate Card Destruction and you chain Serial Spell and you discard the rest of your hand. And boom. And that's this crazy deck that can frustrate other players too. It can feel like you're playing solitaire at points, but it is an interesting deck and I feel like you should know about it too. You're bound to face this on the ladder. And of course, sometimes if you go to locals or even a community event, this X actually had a few tops in-person events too. but at least you know what to expect. And if you're interested in more GOAT format deck guides, you can check out this playlist that I have with other decks already. And of course, you're interested in final Saga products too, check out some of the unboxings that I've already done too. So next time, amigos, bye!